The great hall of the Celestial Accord was silent, a monument to cold, gleaming diplomacy. Two figures stood before the High Archon, one tall and slender with opalescent skin, the other broad and clad in a simple, dark suit. The human's name was John. The alien diplomat's name was Kale. Their joined hands, one pale and four-fingered, one weathered and five-fingered, were a symbol. The final piece in a century-spanning peace treaty between the human Commonwealth and the Vespani Star Collective. A marriage of politics, a union to cement an end to all hostilities. Kale had agreed for duty. The Vespani, a race of refined logic and deep cultural memory, believed the unpredictable humans needed a tether, a soft leash woven from obligation and affection. Control the heart, control the species. They saw humans as clever but erratic, strong but divisive. John had agreed, his government said, for peace. The Vespans assumed it was for their advanced technology, their stability. They saw his calm demeanor as submission, his simple ways as inferiority. The wedding was broadcast across 1,000 worlds. A triumph of Vespani diplomacy. Life in the spire of eternal dawn was precisely regulated. John moved through the graceful halls, a silent giant among the floating, whispering Vespans. He attended state functions, smiled when prompted, and spoke little. He studied. He observed. Kale, fulfilling their duty, was courteous but distant. They shared meals, discussed trivialities, and lived separate lives within the same lavish apartments. John's only request had been a small, sealed crate from Earth, which now sat unopened in his quarters. The Vespani High Command grew confident. With the human figurehead safely ensconced, they began to press advantages. They levied heavy tariffs on human trade lanes. They rerouted key astromining routes through Vespani space, demanding exorbitant passage fees. In the Accord chambers, their diplomats spoke with increasingly dismissive tones. The threat of war was gone, was it not? The human was here. What could they do? John watched the news feeds. He saw the economic reports. He said nothing. The climax came during the Festival of Twin Moons, a grand Vespani celebration. The High Archon, Kale at their side, gave a speech in the Grand Plaza. It was a speech of Vespani prosperity, Vespani ingenuity, a new era where their civilization would rightly guide the lesser races toward a harmonious future. The subtext was clear. Humans were lesser. The treaty was not a partnership, but a pacification. John, standing in his assigned place of honor, merely listened. His face was a placid lake dot after the speech, as the luminescent floats drifted by. A high-ranking Vespani military official, emboldened by nectar wine, approached John. The official's name was Tail. "It must be a comfort," Tail said, his voice carrying, "to know your people are now under the shelter of our wings. Such a volatile species needs a firm, guiding hand." The crowd nearby quieted, sensing a shift. Kale moved to intervene, a flush of anxiety on their cheeks. But John spoke first. His voice was not loud, but it carried a weight that stilled the air. "A guiding hand," John repeated. He looked at Tail, then at Kale, and finally at the High Archon. "You believe this marriage made you safe from humanity." "It made peace permanent," the High Archon stated, their tone leaving no room for argument. John nodded slowly. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of someone opening a ledger. "You misunderstand the treaty. You misunderstand the marriage. You misunderstand humanity." He turned and began walking toward the transport ramp that led to the spire. "If you will follow me, I will provide clarification." Bewildered but arrogant, the High Archon, Kale, Tail, and a cadre of officials followed. They ascended to the private suites. John went to the sealed crate. He input a complex code. The crate opened with a hiss. Inside was not a weapon, not a bomb, not a piece of technology. It was a simple, robust data core, and a folded garment of dark fabric Dachon powered the core. A holographic display flickered to life in the center of the room. It showed star charts, diplomatic logs, and military dispositions. "You analyzed our wars," John said, his voice still calm. "You saw our division, our passion, our chaos. You deemed it weakness. You sought to control the chaos by tying it down." He pointed to a log entry. "You leveraged this marriage to enact Article 7 of the treaty, the Benevolent Guidance Clause, to justify your economic sanctions. Within the agreed framework," Tail sniffed. "The framework," John said, "was designed for this." He zoomed the star chart. It showed the Vespani core worlds, their shipping lanes, their defense grids. Every single one. You see, when you marry a human for peace, you don't just get a diplomat. You get a family member. And in human culture, you share with family. You become vulnerable to them. He tapped another file. "For 6 months, I have had unrestricted access to the Spire's data feeds. A spouse's privilege. I have attended every strategic meeting you allowed me near, heard every casual remark about fleet movements and economic pressure points. My presence made you feel secure. You dropped your shields, not your weapons, but your informational shields. You forgot to guard your words in your own home." The display now showed a real-time analysis of Vespani economy. It was deeply, intricately linked to 3 key hyperspace conduits. John highlighted them. "You have pushed my people. You believe because I stand here, they are muzzled. But you married me. Not them." Kale finally spoke, their voice trembling. "What have you done?" "I have been an ideal spouse," John said. "Listening, learning, supporting." He put on the dark garment from the crate. It was a uniform, not of the human Commonwealth fleet. It was simpler, older. "And now I am informing my family of the situation." On the display, a live comm channel opened. The face that appeared was grizzled, scarred, and belonged to a human admiral in a different, more utilitarian uniform. "Report, Ambassador." "Admiral," John said, his posture straightening into something distinctly military. "The Vespani High Command has enacted full economic coercion under Article 7. Cultural subjugation protocols are active. The predicate for Operation Kith and Kin is confirmed." The Admiral nodded. "Acknowledged. Execute." John turned to the pale-faced Vespani. Operation Kith and Kin was the real treaty. The public one was a curtain. The premise was simple. If you accepted a marital union for peace in good faith, true peace would follow. If you used it as a lever for control, it would become the vector of your vulnerability. You have chosen the latter. On the hologram, the 3 key hyperspace conduits flashed red. Then they went dark. Simulated models showed Vespani trade collapsing, their just-in-time logistics fracturing, their economy seizing up within days. Not a single shot was fired. "The conduits," the High Archon whispered, horror dawning. "How?" "Your navigation data," John said simply. "Shared with me during the planning of our Unity tour last cycle. I suggested the routes myself. You thought it was sentimental. It was cartography. Humanity does not just fight with guns. We fight with logistics, with economics, with the connections you ignore. You tried to bind the chaos. But chaos is not our weakness. It is our atmosphere. You tried to use our sentiment against us. But you joined the family. And now," he said, looking at Kale with something that might have been pity, "you are subject to its rules." Tail surged forward. "This is an act of war." "No," John said, his voice iron. "This is a divorce. The peace was conditional on your good faith. You broke the condition. The marriage is void. The protective clauses are null. Your economies will stall. Your people will demand answers. And the human Commonwealth fleet, which has been holding position just outside the range of your scanners, will now be escorting our merchant vessels through all the trade lanes, using the navigation keys you provided to your beloved human ambassador. He looked at the stunned faces. You wanted to guide the lesser race. Now you will negotiate with them. From a position of profound deficit, the might you feared was never just in our warships. It is in our connection, our adaptability, our utter refusal to be domesticated. You thought marrying a human would tame the star. You only gave the star a key to your front door. John walked to the door. He paused, looking back at Cale. For what it's worth, he said, his voice softening a fraction. I hoped it would not come to this. I hoped for the peace they promised you. But my duty was to my people, just as yours was to yours. He left the spire. In the plaza below, the festival lights continued to glow, ignorant of the silent collapse happening in the room above. The Vespani stood surrounded by the glowing schematics of their own downfall, delivered not by a fleet, but by a husband who had simply been listening. The peace had not been violated. It had been outplayed. And they finally understood the terrible, quiet might of a species that turned even love into a weapon of last resort.